do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Quantum Ecosystem Conversations. My name is Dolly Cheetah, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's discussion. Quantum Ecosystem Conversation explores the people, technologies, investments, and ecosystems shaping the future of innovation through conversations with leaders from industry, academia, government, startups, and the investment community. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Nick Tinch, an entrepreneur, investor, infrastructure leader whose interests span AI, data centers, energy systems, national security, and emerging technologies like quantum. As AI continues to drive demand for computing power and infrastructure, conversations expanding beyond software to include data centers, energy systems, advanced computing, and long-term investment strategies become very important. In today's discussion, we'll explore the intersection of AI, infrastructure, energy investment, and quantum technologies, and how these developments may shape the future of advanced computing. Nick, welcome to Quantum Ecosystem Conversations. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. Before we begin, could you please introduce yourself to our audiences and tell us a bit about your professional journey, educational background, and what led you to current interest in infrastructure, investment, and quantum?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dolly. I really appreciate it. And this is an honor to be here. But Nick Tinch out of the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And my journey is a little bit interesting. I didn't have the best start. When I graduated high school, I actually was reading on a second grade reading level with ADHD and dyslexia. I graduated with a special diploma. And so I didn't graduate college until I was 37, been on my own since I've been 16. Now my family has been in construction for over 70 years. I kind of went the banking route. I went into banking, served there for probably 14 years. And then in the past, probably 12 to 14 years, got into the construction side, kind of followed the path of my family. And so went from building, fixing and flipping houses. We're licensed in 3 states. We are a Class A contractor in DC, Maryland, Virginia, Class B in Florida. And then we're Class A also too, residential and Class A commercial in DC, Maryland, Virginia. And so getting into the data center space kind of came through some venture capitalist guys that reached out to me and some family offices. And it's your network, to be honest with you, of who you know. And construction is construction. There is some difference when it comes to the larger facilities, the data centers, the floating floors, the materials that you use, the HVAC system, the electrical, the plumbing, it's more broad, a little bit more in depth when it comes to building data centers. But that's kind of a short background to a certain degree, a little bit about myself. And I just love what I do. I love construction and real estate, and I love investing, and now being on the venture capitalist side and having, relationships and partners with family offices globally. It's not too much that we can't do, to be honest with you. Yeah. So
Great. So, Nick, thanks for that background and connecting us to the personal side of your profession and yourself. Nick, you're not a quantum physicist, right? You are an
no,
infrastructure investor. You built
yes,
your career in large-scale infrastructure and investment. Recently, you've
yes,
become involved in conversations around AI, data center, hydrogen, defense, and quantum. What are you
yes.
seeing that most people aren't seeing yet?
Yeah. Well, a lot. That's a great question. Number one, I think a lot of people aren't seeing, we call it future proof. How do you future proof these data centers? That's something that you have done a great job in educating me on how important quantum is. So I thank you for it. And number one, how do you make these things? How do you make the data centers? Number one, environmental friendly. How do you use maybe hydrogen or alternative power versus traditional power, and not tapping into the grid to where complaints of power is going up, the light bill is going up. So there's a number of things that you can do, or that I look for, to make sure that in the next 7 to 10 years or 20 years, we have a product that's going to be withstanding time, and at the same time, that's still going to be an asset to the investor from an ROI standpoint. And at the same time, it's environmental friendly to our community, and it's also to an asset to the community, not just a building standing in someone's backyard or on farm land. So I think there's different components to looking at the question that you asked, to be honest with you.
Great. And I'm so happy that you bring up the environmental side of things, because as a chemical
Yes,
engineer, one of those aspects or a metrics of success of a technology always is around, is it
yes,
impacting environment? And not all technologies consider that, but we as chemical engineers are trained to think in that way. And so
yes,
this recent conversation with Mr. Kevin O'Leary, actually investing in Utah on the AI data centers, and lot
Hmm.
of discussions around the water usage, considering we are a dry state in that sense.
Yes.
Any thoughts just before we proceed to the next set of questions so that we can add some comments right
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about the technology when it comes to the alternative power.
now?
You have alternative power that can use natural gas that has a carbon footprint. You have the alternative power that can use water that has no carbon footprint, sewer water. So let's say if a city is paying to get their sewer water dumped,
Mhm.
right? Now we could take that same water and utilize it to power the data centers, right? So that
Mhm.
we're not tapping into the local water source
Yeah.
on one of the on what I and hopefully I can say this on one of the army bases that I'm now consulting with. They have over 175 million gallons of sewer water, right?
Mm.
That's being utilized on the army base. So versus them paying a local municipality to get rid of that, it can be an asset. I could be buying it from them, as a developer or as I'm using alternative power. You have other systems out there, technologies out there that can pull basically moisture from the air to power data centers. So there's all types of different sources out there of a technology that we don't necessarily has to use the local water system to deplete that. You can use salt water, you can use sewer water, you can use mining water. So if you have a mine next door to, or you want to get rid of that slushy mining water,
Mhm.
that water, that muddy water can also too be utilized to turn into hydrogen that can be utilized to power data centers. So there's different technologies out there. I think we have to do more in a sense of educating the public. I think we have to slow down. I think we have to be more inclusive, right, and allowing as many people as we can to be part of the conversation, to help give individuals, a broader understanding of not what they're not just getting news and feed bits, or they're not just getting a light bill in the mail saying, hey, your light bill was, or your water bill was $25. Now it's $105, right?
Right.
Your light bill was $150. Now it's $450.
Definitely, I agree with you on public awareness. Most often technology moves faster than how fast we are educating the public, and I think they have to go hand in hand for appreciation of the benefits to the
Appreciation.
society. So let's move on to the next section on why infrastructure matters. Nick, everyone
Mm-hmm.
talks about AI models. Very few people talk about infrastructure required to support them. And so
Mm-hmm.
would be the case for quantum in future. What do you think, or why do you think infrastructure has become such a strategic investment area?
Mhm. Well, that's a great question. You look at the type of infrastructure that you want to use, and important from the insulation is very important from the standpoint of you're able to get this product up and running you're able to go vertical very quickly. You're able not to have so much stress on the community with building such a large facility. And then once again, you're able to go back to your ROI, right? If you are, utilizing bonds, you utilizing family offices, venture capitalists, and if you are paying a debt carrying cost to cover this debt, right? You want to be able to go vertical very quickly. But then also too, you want a material that's going to last and that's going to be able to handle storms and different types of weathers. So there's a couple of different technologies out there. One of the ones that I'm very familiar with and that I love to utilize is it's called steel framing, company right out of Orlando, Florida, American made company. And they just do an amazing job when it comes to building infrastructure very quickly, and deploying it very quickly. Yeah.
Great, great. So, what is driving the explosive demand for data centers right now? If you can comment on that.
You know what? I think that's a very double-edged sword question that you're smiling. Technology is the new oil, right? It's the new currency. We are in a race with so many different other countries. And every country is racing to do this. Now, some have perfected it better than others, but the thing with technology, whether it's AI agents, whether it's quantum technology, whether it's hydrogen power, um, whether it's alternative power, you look at number one, whoever can be successful achieving the goal of getting their data centers built first will be leading the future, right? I have a very limited perspective, but I do know is that whichever country gets to the finish line first, they're going to be leading it. And so it's very important and it's very, very sensitive right now that we do our best here in the States to get everything up and running. We are behind. to a certain degree, to be honest with you. When it comes to the power source, when it comes to building data centers, I know here and we call it the capital of the data center market, we probably have over 540 data centers here in the DMV, right? In the DC, Maryland, Virginia market. That's more than any other state within the country. But we also to have another 70 to 100 of them just sitting because most local energy companies aren't adequate, do not have the manpower or the infrastructure to support the demand, right? So you have these things that are already entitled, they're ready to go. Some of the lands are already cleared. And so with the local energy source not being what's needed to help support these data centers, then we come at a need. Now you look at a national security standpoint, right? If we can't defend our borders when it comes to, being hacked and quantum, that puts us in a very sensitive situation to where now, we're kind of exposed. And so, you got an ROI, you have a national security standpoint, you have an investor standpoint, and then you have local businesses, universities, you have colleges, you have municipalities. So it's not just from a government standpoint or national security, but when you look at far as the healthcare system needs data centers, the car market needs data centers. It's not just, the government or these three-letter agencies. And it's not just, it's something behind it. When you look at all aspects of the career field, everyone needs to have space for them to be able to not only expand their business, but grow it and, contain data in a safe environment, if that makes sense, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned the car manufacturing. Essentially, everything it spills out into, it's like internet, right? It is going to touch all aspects of life going forward. And so we
That's
just
very correct.
meet, a conversation with our previous guest on policy, actually quantum policy, and why it should be shaping as of now. When we start getting into different areas of that quantum is going to touch, just like AI, I think the policy also needs to be shaping in parallel. And so, yeah, this is very important discussion, and I would like to bring you in again when we do a panel on that in future.
Yeah. Well, oh yeah, I would love to. And I'm going to give you a little nugget too. I'm telling my clients now where it was a concern that we don't have as much land or, hey, how we're going to build these infrastructures. One of the problems that we're going to have, you have the hyperscalers out there, right? You have the BlackRocks, the Blackstones, the NVIDIAs, the Amazons, the Facebook guys, and you have those organizations that are just they're the hyperscalers, right? You have the powerhouses, organizations that, right? One of the problems that we're going to have that we can solve now, as you're talking about policy, is that I have told my clients and people I'm working with, partner with, and working for, hey, let's not wait to 7 to 10 years to build smaller data centers now. Let's build smaller data centers actually now. Let's not wait to then, because you look at data centers they will look like the CVS, the McDonald's, the Walgreens. They're due to they're going to get smaller. So I kind of been telling my clients, hey, let's get ahead of this curve, right?
Yeah.
And when we do the numbers and the data, versus you building a 1 million square feet data center or a 500,000 square foot data center, if we build four 100,000 square foot, spaces, right?
Yeah.
That can actually produce the same amount of ROI that a 1 million square foot data center would build if you build it properly and you know what to put in it, right? If that makes sense. So similar to as you're talking about, the gentleman talked about policies, we need to be working on policies now. Yes. I'm telling folks, and then, the community is a little bit intimidated of these large data centers. So I'm like, well, you know what? Let's reduce the size. We can control the cost. We can control the energy consumption. We can control the amount of water that's being utilized. And then also, too, we need to make sure that the citizens and the community is on board with a lot of this stuff that we're doing so that they feel comfortable that we're not just looking for the ROI. We're looking to say, hey, this is a community-driven project because it is in your community. Right. So versus us looking at building these large data centers, you're only going to have a few companies out there. And that's going to be, and our government is going to be one of them that's going to have those large hyperscaler, data centers, 2 million, 3 million square feet, 1 million square feet. Those are going to be being downsized, actually starting now, versus waiting for 7 to 10 years. I'm starting to do that now. so that we are ahead, and it's more controllable and a better ROI, if that makes sense.
Great. And we'll keep tracking your success for that. So
Yeah.
you also highlighted some trends, I think, in one of your recent posts about AI operations, energy systems, advanced cooling, edge expansion, and resilience. Which of these do you believe will have the greatest impact over the next decade and why?
To go with the whole dolly. I'm going to say quantum. To be honest with you, I think quantum is going to be very important to the future of data centers and technology. I believe power as well too. Right. I would say power is number two, quantum number one, power number two. How do we utilize the proper power to not only sustain these data centers and the technology? So quantum number one, power number two, and then the second thing would be, how do we then better operate the data centers, right? So that's from a internal process. That may be AI agents, that may be smaller chips, that may be different technology that's coming out that's already actually out, but isn't been available to the public. Let me say that. And so I would, those would be my top three. Quantum technology, number one, the power source, alternative power, because I do believe that we need to use alternative power. Nuclear is not ready yet. That's probably 10 years out. 10 to probably, I would say 10 to 15 years out. Nuclear is not ready, in my personal opinion, but I'm not a nuclear expert. Let me say that. But I don't believe nuclear is ready, right? So what's the other alternatives that we can utilize? And then how do we operate these things with efficiency, right? So that we're not, number one, hurting the environment, and we're able to utilize them for what they were built for, right? And that's to keep our data safe. That's to keep our borders protected, because we are in the future. The future is not, we're not going after the future anymore. The future is here now.
Right.
If that makes sense. Yep. Yep.
Absolutely. So,
Yep.
do you view, since the quantum entered our conversation and your space as well, do you view quantum primarily as a quantum computing play or an infrastructure opportunity or something else?
I would say both. I think it's a computing play. We definitely need that, and then also too, it need to be in the initial infrastructure, whether in from two ways. I would say quantum in the cloud, and then quantum on site, right? I think every developer, in my personal opinion, or builder of data centers, should allocate a minimum of 10,000 square feet for quantum technology, right? Or just to be enabled, right, in the data center. That's my personal opinion. So I think it need to be in the forefront of the conversation, because what's happened is you're building a let's say a $3 billion system, $100 million system. Heck, it can be a $1 system, right? You don't want to build something, even if the value is so much there, and now by the time that you're finished with it, now it's obsolete. Now you're like, okay, and you just put, $50 million, $20 million, $100 million into this product, right? So quantum is one of those key components that I wasn't even understanding the full value of it until I started being educated on it and been part of the conversation. And I'm like, oh my God, this is something that's so valuable. How could we not have it, right? How could we not spend an extra, 10, $20 million, into, the system, right, to have it in. So I think, and have it both were in the cloud and also too on site. I think we need to have space available on site that we can put those, have the technology there on site as well too.
Great. Now, so how big are these data centers that you are dealing with, if that can be public? I know you mentioned 10,000 square footage for a quantum footprint on the premise, but how big would be the rest of the AI data centers?
You know what? Anywhere,
Yeah.
yeah, anywhere from 70,000 square feet or larger, right? What I'm trying to do right now, I'm trying to stay under 300,000 square feet, to be honest with you, for so many reasons. Because number one, where data centers are going. Number two, the chips that are being developed now, the technology that is out there but not has been brought to the public. And so we are really I'll say this, we are further along than we people know, right? In the sense of technology. Anywhere for me, I would say from 70,000 square feet to up to 1 million, 2 million square feet. But what I would like to do now, and what I'm trying to do, is stay around 70 to maybe 300,000 per data center. The other part, what this does, it gives you also too, more land. I'm looking at a parcel of land, some acres right now. It's over 30,000. 30 acres. It's over 30 acres. And the two data centers that we're having projected to put on that site, those 30 acres, is I think they're going to be two of them for over 1 million square feet each. And I was talking to my team and I said, and I'm thinking, and I'm like, well, you know what? No, I don't want to build a 1 million square foot data center. Number one, and I want to help the venture capitalists save money and the family offices save money, right? And so I was thinking is we have 30 acres. Let's not utilize 80% of that land. Let's only utilize maybe 50% of it, right? And then we can have the other 50% or 30% allocated to mid-sized data centers, something like that. That may look like a tiny home, but can hold just as much data as a 30,000 square foot data center due to the chip, right? They're going to get that small. So I'm looking at doing my best to be ahead, and then also to specializing in smaller data center market, right? Just specializing.
Is that an upcoming market, you think? I've heard about it about a year ago, about downsizing these to the extent you mentioned about McDonald's sizing. So is that something you hear in the conversations and that looks more promising than these gigantic ones with footprint?
Well, I'm making it part of the conversation. And so looking at technology, the ROI, family offices, the venture capitalists, doing your best to get money returned back to your VCs as quickly as possible, so you're not paying, the debt carrying costs. And then once you look at where microwaves or where TV were, the flat screen TVs were 20 years ago, right? We're moving at a faster pace than that. So for me, I'm making it part of the conversation to get the investors, the government. You're leading the initiative, for the state of Utah. So and leaders like yourself, I'm trying to get you guys to understand, like, you know what, we don't have to utilize this whole 30 acres. Let's utilize maybe 15 acres of it. Let's downsize it. But we can control the bill. We can get it vertical very quickly. We can get the hydrogen power or the alternative power there very quickly. And now we have a working ROI that's going to be paying taxes. And we have another 15 acres that we can utilize for the community or something else, right? Because it's part of my personal community initiative, right? So I'm kind of probably putting it and getting leaders like yourself, governors, the generals, these 3-star generals and these colonels. I'm getting them to think, you know what, Nick, that's the assistant secretary of the Army, trying to get, our leadership like that to say, hey, there's an alternative way that we can reach your goal in the mission that you want, but we can do it. Let's do it differently. Let's do it with more thought in mind, in the sense of the environment and the community, and also too getting the results that you need, right? Because you got to complete the mission, right? So that's kind of my thoughts behind it, to be honest with you. Yeah.
And how do you see AI and quantum intersect in everything that you're doing if you start incorporating quantum into the infrastructure?
Oh my God, great question. Is nothing you can do without those two. It's nothing you can do without quantum and also to AI agents. Mm-hmm. Sadly to say, it's one of those things that you just need in your organization, right? In your municipality, national security, Microsoft needs it. When you talk about AI agents and quantum technology, it's just like saying you want to turn off the air. If you're looking to turn off the air to your organization, your data centers, then you don't use quantum or AI agents and see what happens. You're like, in 1 month, you're going to be obsolete. It's not going to be even valuable. So we have to be realistic now. So many folks, I wasn't a big AI agent, quantum person, alternative power type individual. But now that I see the importance of a national security standpoint, the benefit of how it can benefit different organizations, children, families, AI agents and quantum technology is something that is here to stay. And so I'm going to say something that the Colonel said to me. We were in the meeting. Colonel said, AI agents and quantum is like a team member at the local meeting. Like when you call your staff together for a meeting, you have 10 people in a room. The AI agent and the quantum is one of those individuals. It's not the final decision, but it does have an opinion and it does have a valid knowledge that's needed to make a final decision, but it is not the final decision. And what, Colonel said, that it made so much sense. I'm like, that's brilliant. You say, so how he looks at, and how the goal is to look at quantum and AI agents, is they're one of the team members. They're not the final decision. And I think people have turned it backwards on utilizing the technology and the resources that we have. But he said the human, or the leader, whether it's you, the governor, the president, general, one of the generals, they are the decision makers. We bring all of that knowledge to them, and quantum AI agents are involved in that in bringing those, that type of information. And then we'll allow the leadership to make that decision on what's the next step, right? If that makes sense. But I thought it was brilliant on how Colonel, stated that.
Yes, and going back to at the table, one of my famous, I didn't quote it, but I am borrowing it, is if you're not at the table in a quantum conversation, you're on the menu, right?
Mm,
So it's almost
wow.
like
Wow.
we talked about the race, how we lose
Yes.
the race to the adversaries, but fascinating, because we as technologists and engineers and academicians and policymakers, we sit on this side of development interest, not necessarily all the way to technology readiness level 9, where you operate infrastructure and
Yes.
building, and you're
Yes.
talking about
Yeah.
multi-billion dollars. So it's such a
Yeah.
fascinating thing for us to understand your perspective as well. So thanks for
Mhm.
all the inputs. Moving on to our next question. If a hyperscale data center operator wanted to become like quantum ready, what infrastructure changes would they need to consider starting now?
Woo. Those change orders are expensive. Let me say that.
Even now,
Yeah.
when we are in the planning phases, which is the point
Yeah.
you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
If we
Yeah,
plan
you're
well,
right. You know what? I would say hire me, bring me in, bring me and my team, bring Dolly in. I'm going to put that out there. Honestly, you're absolutely right. And thank you for saying what you're saying. That's being part of the planning stage, right? That's being part of the initial conversation. And also too, that's part of educating yourself. Being educated is one of the best things you can always do to be in rooms like what you create. You're one of the rooms that you create. It's an honor to be in them. Let me say that. Let me just say that. But as I'm doing this real estate class, I'm learning about definitions. I'm learning about different laws and things like that. I'm like, oh man, like some stuff I didn't know, some stuff I forgot, and some stuff that I need now. And I'm like, oh, this is very valuable information. To get to the point that you're saying is that you have to be in those rooms, and you can't be afraid to be educated. You can't be afraid to be sharpened. I have learned when you're in rooms, sometimes you just need to be quiet and listen and just be present, because you're around such brilliant people and you want them to talk and you want them to feed your soul and your mind. Even when I'm around you guys, I'm like, let me see how I can. I play this game how long I can be quiet, because I want to listen, right? I want to listen. So being part of those initial conversations, and then when you're able to speak, make sure that you're asking the right questions so that it speaks volume and that you're not just speaking. So that being said, the initial conversation, your network, being educated, and then, attending conferences, reaching out to people, being a part of those conversations, and not being afraid to say, hey, I say, Dr. Dolly, I need your help. I don't know this, could you educate me more on it? And that way you guys are sharpening each other, right? I tell you, like, some things that I'm going to bring you to the table on, because you're just an expert in your field. So being part of the initial conversation, number one, understanding how the design process should look, understanding why you want quantum or AI agents into your product. That's another thing. You don't just want it because Nick Tinch and Dr. Dolly is saying that you should have it. You want it because it's going to be a great ROI for your investors. You want it because it's going to be a great finished product. And you want it because in 10 years or 7 years or 20 years, you're not going to be replacing, this product, right? Or trying to upgrade it when you have invested so much money into it. So there's a combination of things that you have to look at it from a standpoint of why it's important and why you need to be having this conversation earlier. And it's interesting, you are one of the leading experts now that are just pushing this. And like, you're like, from IBM to anywhere, you're like, no, this is important. And now all of us are saying, oh, wow, we didn't realize the importance of this quantum and the AI agents. And let's slow down. Let's have the conversation. Let's implement it. And if we're going to be making such a large investment, let's go ahead and make the right investment, right? not just to build something, if that makes sense. So I'm a little long-winded, but I want to answer your question.
Absolutely. And this is perfect
Yep.
leeway to our next set of questions is the
Mm-hmm.
investor perspective, right? And how do you evaluate generally your investments? So how do you evaluate these quantum opportunities when the
Mm-hmm.
technology is still developing?
Mm-hmm. You know, that we can say that with cars. We could have said that with Elon Musk did the Tesla. We could have said that with helicopters. I think there's always going to be. I always call it a tennis match of back and forth, whether technology or it may be a step or two behind. I do believe if you have the capability, the capital to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this the right way. Yeah, we could save $3 million or $5 million, but I believe if we make this investment now, it's going to 10x itself in 5 years. And then in 5 years, it's going to 20x itself in 20 years. And so I think you have to look at the numbers, follow the numbers. One of the things I did early on in my career that I really regret doing is not following the numbers. It was, I call it a huge lesson of mine. I have learned in this career, in this season of my career, follow the numbers, do the math, right? You're deploying capital respectfully. You reverence the capital that you're deploying, and you're looking at it as what is the next 20 years are going to look like, not if I get this thing built and I didn't implement quantum, right? Well, it's only going to get us an ROI for maybe 3 years or actually less. And then now we're trying to upgrade, which is going to cost us more money. We have to shut down. We have the racks in there. You have everything's in there. We have the electrical, HVAC, plumbing. Now we have to totally shut down stuff, which is going to cost way more money. And sometimes it's more effective to build a new data center than to try to upgrade one, depending on, that's just facts, right? Sometimes it's better to say, hey, you know what? We're going to build a whole new center versus trying to upgrade this data center because it's so far behind, right?
Absolutely. This
Yep.
brings me back to a conversation without naming the name of the chemical company. Is
Mm-hmm.
they are legacy. They're a legacy company. So it's all the
Mm-hmm.
sensors within the manufacturing plant have been from
Mm-hmm.
1990s, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
And
Oh my
so,
goodness.
and the data, and they're exposed to corrosion, chemicals, and all that. But then the cost to actually replace the sensors with the
Mm-hmm.
latest AI-enabled sensors is huge. So they have actually decided to go the other route and
Mm-hmm.
build a brand new chemical plant with AI
Yeah.
integration in it. So it's
I
amazing.
just
It goes back to the same thing, lessons learned from, parallel fields.
yeah, lessons
So
learned.
what separates a credible quantum company from a company that is still trying to use quantum as a marketing term? And how do you spot them?
Ooh, why? You're asking some great questions. Okay. You know what? I'm going to answer that across the board, right? Here's the thing I'll say: do your research, consult with an expert, right? Do more research, and then look at the top 3 quantum companies that are out there, right? Now, just because they have a great name, that don't mean they may be the best fit, right? But what I am doing and what I would advise someone to do is have an expert on the team, pay them well as a consultant or a team member, and then bring in the top 3 or the top 2 quantum computing, technologies, the firms, right? Let them know what you're looking to do. Visit the factory in person, and so that you understand the value of what you're getting, right? That's what I would say. I would definitely say, do your research, and bring in an expert that you trust and that that can kind of guide you through that process
Sure.
before you deploy that capital. That's
Sure.
what I would say.
So in that sense, do you already have a roadmap to how you want to approach the next 5 years, 2 years, with
Mhm.
the pace at which quantum is advancing to integrate quantum? And what would you need to see as an investor with respect to how low the risks should be, right? Like, what is your risk appetite to adopt quantum right now?
Let's see. The first question, I'm trying to work 10 years out. I'm literally trying to work 10 years ahead when it comes to data centers technology. So I'm 10 years out, right? The other part from an ROI standpoint or an investor standpoint, that's kind of hard to say because every situation has to be viewed individually, and you can't lump them all in because the data center that I may be building in Utah may not be the same, even though it's the same size, the same a lot of the same technology. but the market may require something different here in Virginia or Maryland or DC or Florida, right? So I think you have to look at every market differently and then make adjustments as needed and do your best to reduce your change orders now so that, you're not 50% into the bill of the product and now you have a huge change order because you didn't have the right wiring, the right coolant system. There's a new cooling gel out that you were not aware about, so in there's two or three top energy, coolant, and plumbing companies that are out in the market now, and one of them is based here in the Virginia area. One is out in Texas, and one is somewhere else. And so, staying abreast with those executives. Hey, man, what are you guys working on? What new coolant products do you have coming in? Hey, you guys are going to be the contractors on this data center. Tell me what new technology that you have, right? That either we can reduce the costs, we can speed up the bill, right, to be more efficient, right, to get it done a lot quicker, and we can get the off taker, the end user, in a lot sooner than what they projected. So, and then also too, the other thing that I have not said, your off taker, having a conversation with your off taker, right, your end user, right. You have to make sure what they want, because like I say, the same company that's building something in Utah may be totally different here in Virginia or in Florida, right? Because it's a different market, right? So
If I may interject, so what does that exactly mean? Is it their demand on energy or the type of data they process? How
yeah,
different are
there you
those?
go.
Okay.
You both everything that you just said and above, right? The type of data that they're going to be processing, the demand when it comes to the power, the region that they're in. Everyone knows, and this is no secret, so I'm not saying anything I shouldn't. Everyone knows the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia is, this is the community for agencies, right? And so Utah has a little bit of that too. I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to leave that there. So you want to look at, okay, and then you want to look at, if the tenant that I have now isn't the tenant in the future, how do I get a government agency tenant? And there's certain things that you need to have in those data centers to be able to pull in a tenant at like an agency or, a three-letter organization, right? So you have to know what they need, what specs they need, right? And working with their security team, right? And having certain space within the space, I'll leave it like that. So let's say you start with a tenant and that tenant doesn't, this is one thing I've been pretty good at. Even though I may start with a certain off taker, I'm not necessarily specing this for this off taker. I'm specing it for two or three off takers down the line. That makes sense. Yes. In case they may say, hey, Nick, we no longer need this. Now I'm not trying to catch up to going out to get a government agency or a state agency to house their data in this data center, because it's already equipped for it, right? If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I think, working ahead, number one, and then from the standpoint of the off taker, having that conversation prior to, and making sure that you're not necessarily building this data center for your current client, you're building it for the next two or three clients, right? If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Which again beautifully brings us to the next point on defense and national security, which is something you have been interfacing with, and that distinguishes you from several other real estate investors or experts. You spend a lot of time around people thinking about national security and critical infrastructure, particularly your association with the DMV area. Why are governments paying increasing attention to advancing quantum computing technologies and also just computing technologies?
Yeah, really great question. I can't speak for them, but what I can speak from is, being an individual that's in the room, is that when I look at it from a businessman standpoint, a builder standpoint, it's important from a national security standpoint, right? It's important for, in a sense of being able to protect the borders of this country when we're the satellites, when we have soldiers deployed, moving currency, right? You look at it, I think a lot of times we're looking at this too much of the surface level. The biggest thing that most governments, this is just a theory, so let me say that, they're looking at it from a sense of how can we keep our money safe, our capital safe from not being hacked, right? Everything is digital now, right? Press of a button, you can move trillions of dollars with just a press of a button, right? So outside of war and defense and the biggest thing that America is a capitalist society, right? It's the heartbeat of this country, and it really is. And so I think, other than from the national security standpoint, how do we protect our Federal Reserve? How do we protect our banks? How do we protect these traders? And when I say traders, like stock investor traders, right? Day traders, engineers, documents. How do we protect that? So I believe that the conversation that they're looking at having, this is just a theory, is based on, and I have never thought about this until I'm talking my thoughts out, is how do we protect the assets of this country, the assets of each branch of the military, the Federal Reserve, the healthcare system, the Social Security system. How do we protect that? And having some of this technology and talking about it and being a part of those conversations I could say that may be one of the reasons why. I think we're looking too much on the surface. When you look at the bottom line, it may be, how do we protect the wealth of America, right? The Bitcoin, even though it's the blockchain, and how do we protect money being stolen and moved around and it wasn't approved, right? So that can be one of the theories on why our government can be so interested in it, right? But I always say I'm just a team player. I'm not a decision maker. I'm just an advisor. And, it's just a blessing being at the table to say, hey, did you think about this? Could you think about this? Or I know this young lady out of Utah and this guy out of Utah, that you guys can bring that, that can help, help stabilize, what we're doing. Right. So it's just been an honor to be at the table. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, going back to the quantum infrastructure and it basically being a national asset, strategic national
It
asset, is
is.
what you're
It
saying.
is. It
That's the
is.
conclusion. So, how does having that domestic quantum infrastructure compare, or why is it so critical when we are talking about national competitiveness at large, right? When compared to other countries and intellectual property and all that, what, in your opinion, from your point of view, is what I would like to know.
Wow, that's a huge bite. That's a huge response. Going back to I think the initial response is similar to HP computers in Microsoft. Let's put it that way. So, the government, our government, the US government can be, Microsoft, and let's say one of the foreign governments, nations can be HP. We're all in the same space. We're all building one of the same products, but what is going to make what we're doing and what they're doing different? That's talent. Number one, you got to have talent. You can't be, you got to have the best talent, right? You got to have the capital and the resources, and the other part is the natural resources needed.
Yes.
That's one other thing that we do not talk about, the natural resources that's needed for these data centers and for the satellites and for the cell phones and those raw minerals that we need, right? So I believe that just like any other industry, whether you have Apple or Tesla or NVIDIA or SpaceX, the biggest thing that I have seen all those companies do that I really admire, that I'm doing now, hey, let's partner together. Yeah, go ahead.
Unconventional partnerships is the people
It's
are
the new.
less risk averse, I think, now.
Yes,
Right?
yes. It's the new capital too.
Yes.
You're right. It's new capital. Because here's the thing, we're all on this planet together. Now, this is just something I would like to see, the kumbaya. And I call it everybody play nice in the sandbox, right? So you have BlackRock investing into Blackstone, or Blackstone investing into Apple, and Apple investing into NVIDIA, and NVIDIA investing into Microsoft, and Microsoft investing into a Meta. The best thing that those organizations and America could do, in my personal opinion, is say, hey, some of these, these different countries, let's humble ourselves, and how do we work together?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, is that reality? No, but depending on what party is in the White House, right? But from a standpoint of the importance of our country reaching the finish line first, it's very important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I believe that we're a lot further along than we say, but you're not supposed to show your hand. And so that's probably the best I can answer that. I think, like I say, in the sense of Microsoft, and I HP, right? In the sense of, we're all kind of doing the same thing. And with technology now, we're all moving somewhat at the same pace to a certain degree, right?
Yeah.
So, in my personal opinion, my humble opinion, how do we play nice in the sandbox together to reach the goal for humanity? And at the same time, everyone's going to make a profit, right? If that's the end goal. If the end goal isn't technology, the end goal is who's going to control the machine, right? Which no one's going to control the machine. And that's just a thought I have. So getting to the finish line is important, but how you get there is important. I had to learn that too in my career. Yes, okay to have speed, but make sure that you have speed with discipline, integrity, and patience.
And direction.
And direction, right? I like that. And direction. So I had to learn that myself. And yeah, so I hope that I answered that question. But from a sense of like any other organization, whether it's the state of Utah versus the state of Virginia, right? Or the state of Virginia versus the state of Florida. Well, Virginia wants to win, Florida wants to win, and Utah wants to win.
We are doing
Yeah,
great in our state actually right now, and
doing really
I
great. You're
think
doing really
we have had excellent leaders, and we need
yes,
counterparts in different sectors, and we were able
yes.
to find them, form a critical mass. And I think it is not never a one person's thing. It can
It's not.
originate with a thought can be
Yes,
from one person, but it has to
yes,
be everybody has to join hands. And so yeah, I'm really grateful to work in this sandbox right now called Utah, and then maybe we can have Utah become a national model on one of the
yes,
aspects. We don't have to be playing in every vertical or everything
yes.
quantum, but that is part of our ecosystem roundtables we do as well. Thank you,
Well,
thank you
one
for
one
that comment. Yeah.
yeah, one great thing that you said that I am learning sitting back watching the military, the army, the government, or working as a team, right? Seeing how, and I was told this too. Colonel said this to me, and I use it now. He said, Nick, he said, if once you learn to put a process between you and your problems, you'll have less problems. He said, learn to implement the process. He said, that's one thing that we try to perfect in the Army, right? And me being the commanding colonel of the base is a process. And so going back to what you were saying is that if you guys can perfect that process in Utah, you will be the leading state and and one of the leading experts globally. And so, but that's one thing I'm learning now. Not a team as an environment, right? Working as a unit, not by self, and then playing nice in the sandbox, I say, and then also to learning to put an amazing process between everything that you do so that you can catch a lot of the mistakes or the issues early on, like you talked about being a part of the design when you're building a data center, right? Having the right people at the table. Because if you don't have the right people at the table and you have someone a builder that does not care about the community, doesn't care about the venture capitalist or the family office, doesn't care about when you get this thing 85% built, now how you have to go to Bank of America, JP Morgan, and get it refinanced to pay the venture capitalist or the family office back. How are you going to carry, so because if it isn't in that position to where it's a valuable asset, JP Morgan and Bank of America, Wells Fargo, they're not going to want to refi that project out and pay off the family office, right? So that you can get it up and running and complete your project. So making sure you have like those a team understanding of this isn't just important for the end user. No, it's important now, right? This is highly important now. Like every decision we make, every dollar we spend, every technology we put in here, it's important now.
So definitely, and I second you on that is foresight is more important and
It's
planning is
way more
more
important.
important than execution, right? I mean, execution is following
Yeah.
the process, but having the right plan is and foresight about it and having diverse, in fact, the devil's advocates, as I like to call
Yes.
at the table,
Yes.
is very important. People
Yes.
who are willing to be blunt and not biased about what is happening and
Yeah.
basically showing us a reflection of that is very
Yeah.
important. So, moving on to one of the last few questions,
Hmm.
many real estate infrastructure related investors and entrepreneurs are thinking quantum, and including some technologists think quantum is decades away. Why are you paying attention right now?
Well, we can say anything is decades away. Once again, I think this is where this is kind of a hack, right? That the hack is I have friends, and I have a cool circle. I'm working 10 years ahead, and I learned this from Jeff Bezos, something he does with Amazon, right? So you're saying this is a decade out, but Nick is already a decade out. So us working on it and implementing it now is actually important, right? And so you have people that may think that way or understand that, but I don't think that they understand the true value of what we are doing now, that we're going to need this type technology and infrastructure in the next 5 to 7 years, not even a decade out. So if you're not working in the future, you're not working in the present,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's just,
absolutely. I
yeah,
totally
if you're
understand.
not working in the future, you're not working in the present. So, and like I say, technology is real, and not taking my advice. It's in your best interest to talk to an expert that's a leading expert in the industry that can actually educate you on the importance of quantum, the importance of alternative power, the importance of the AI agents, the importance of the new coolant systems that's out there.
Right.
Um, so you know, whoever that person is, I hope that they evolve and evolve to understand that if they don't, then they're going to be out of a job very quickly versus them being needed 10, 20 years down the line because they made the right decision now and they slowed down. Right. I'm so happy I went through my lessons early, and these past 4 years of I'm so happy because now I can slow down, and I have a great group of friends that I can call on and talk to, and that can advise me and like, nope, slow down, let's not do that, this is what I'm thinking, this is what the market is doing. And I'm just grateful to have friends that are leading in industries that I can call on and just text and talk to, and just bend their ear, whether it's in the venture capitalist space, whether it's in the technology space, whether it's in the infrastructure space. I'm just happy I have that. God has allowed me to have that level of friendship with people that I can just call on, and so I'm not that person to say, hey, why are we doing that now? Because Dr. Dolly doesn't know what she's talking about. Okay, whatever. She's way smarter than she let you know. Than you think. She's being humble. So no, let's utilize this now. Let's make this investment now, right? So that we're not, we're not behind. When we think we're finished.
What do you think? And we haven't touched about green hydrogen, probably for a different episode, because I'm very passionate about, as I said,
Yes.
STEMI, looking into production of hydrogen or renewables, all
Mhm.
of that. So we can talk about that in a different, a follow-up conversation. But talking about the overestimating, are people overestimating quantum in your side of things or underestimating it?
You know what? I think that they're not educated enough to know what to do. I think if and this is one thing I don't learn. Oh, thank you. I believe if you have the right person expanding, educating, teaching the information, I believe most folks will say, oh, man, that makes sense. I don't like wasting brain power. So I dislike having a person that's talking, just trying to talk way above my head, trying to sound, which they are educated. 1+1 = 2. It just depends on the person you're talking to. Make sure that I'm talking or explaining something that is digestible, that the person can understand. And here's the thing I don't learn too. I'm in the room, so what am I trying to prove? Most people that are speaking like that, they're not confident in being in the room. I'm not going to use a big word if I can say a small word.
Yeah. Not
And
everybody needs to be doing everything, and there is,
yes,
a it's a
yes,
stakeholder communication, technology translation, and
yes.
technology communication
There
is
you go.
more important
See?
than the invention itself, because we have a lot of
Yes.
inventions sitting in our labs. It's just that why
Yep.
are they not translated to commercialization yet, right?
Yes.
And why
Yes.
haven't it reached, investors like yourself or,
Mhm.
your colleagues to
Yep.
educate? Basically, educating the educators is the biggest challenge right now,
Yes,
and the
ma'am. Yes,
decision
ma'am.
as well.
Yes. And it's interesting you say that that is a huge problem right now, educating the educators. And so I'm just grateful to be an educator, but want to be educated, right?
Yeah.
And humble myself enough to say, hey, you know what, I need to learn this. And so I'm just very grateful for it.
Great. So if you had $1 billion, what percentage would you allocate to AI, green hydrogen, quantum, and advanced computing?
You know what? That's a great question, and is actually all four of those I would diversify into. The reason I would go with power first or energy first is because that's the greatest need right now. And I think that's going to be a really lasting ROI because some organizations, companies are 10 years behind in a sense of helping data center developers or deploying the power that's needed. So let's say maybe, 40% into power, a good 30% into quantum, because that's a long strategic investment that most people are going to be shocked by. So I can see that 5Xing the money, right? I think 40, 30, energy 40, 30 hydrogen, AI infrastructure. Because that has slowed down, I think everyone is utilizing AI agents. I think we have different systems that can build them very, very, very beautifully and deploy them very quickly. I think those industries are going to be doing very well for a short period of time due to we're going to start downsizing data centers, right? So you have a lot of countries that are behind. So, with $1 billion diversifying, that's just my personal preference. I would have had to talk to a financial advisor, my financial advisor. But in a sense of being in the space right now and looking at long-term gain, not short-term gain, I think those 4 asset classes would do very well over the course. And here's the thing, if you can get an average anywhere from a 9% all the way up to maybe a 15% yearly, on an investment, I think that's pretty good. So, you don't want to be too greedy. Anywhere from 9, nothing lower than 9. Anything over 15%, you're getting a little bit risky, in my opinion. When you get to 15, 18%, you're pushing red. And there are investments out there that can get you that over 15 to 18%. But I think a good, solid investment, yearly investment, is anywhere from 9 to 15%. And you just let it continue to build and build and build. And I think that's a very steady, asset to be able to utilize to keep your organization and with capital, right? If that makes sense. So
great. We are approaching the end of the conversation. I wanted to know, since there are so many wide variety of folks that are watching these particular conversations, any final thoughts for students, researchers, entrepreneurs, workforce professionals, or ecosystem builders, maybe even future leaders who may be listening in today? Any piece of advice or perspective you'd like to share with them as they prepare for the quantum future?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I think everyone has their own individual gift and path that God has given them. One thing I think the one thing that helped me was work hard, build your resume, do the work. Because if you don't, it's going to come back to make you do it. I had to go through that. There's a lot of processes and procedures I had to go over again. The other part is really the main thing I would say, be okay being uncomfortable in the room. Some of the rooms I'm in, a lot of times I'm very uncomfortable. I'm going to be honest with you. You're sitting with some of the top brass leadership in the world or in the country, and you're sitting there at the table saying, how the hell did I get here? Because I ask myself that a lot of times, and the only thing that I can explain is that showing up, even when it doesn't look good, that's another thing you have to do. Everything isn't going to be looking good in your life for you to be at the table. Your life can be out of whack. But I think one thing I learned with some of these organizations is that one of the reasons they're going to pick you is because you're able to have grit and you're able to stand with a lot of pressure on you and still function. But the one thing that I have been able to do is build a diversified portfolio of great things, from writing books. I've written over 12 books. I have 2 patents. You have a slew of patents. You advise a lot of people. And just show up with a smile, show up professional. Your life is not going to always be perfect. It's interesting, me and you were supposed to meet last week, and then we couldn't. And I was like, oh man, I was a little intimidated. I'm like, I'm letting Dolly down. And you're one of those people that people don't want to let you down. Like, people want to come through for you, right? But you're so humble with the level of authority you've been giving, right? I would advise them to keep going, to truly believe in themselves. And I know this stuff may sound small, but even when everyone gives up on you, just believe in you. Even when I was wrong, or I didn't succeed in 10 areas of my life and all the pressure of the world was on me, I still believed in me. I still got up. I still, I learned to ask for help. And everybody that you ask for help for isn't going to help you. And you have to be okay with that. You have to go by discernment and asking for help, right? And another thing, everyone that's into your life, that's not going to be into your life to help you, right? There's people that are going to come in your life because they want to use you, right? And those be the ones that don't stay long because their motives weren't right? When they can't get what they want. I would say just believe in you. I think one of the biggest things I have done is believe in Nick, and which got me to here. And, now we're here.
Absolutely. Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights and experiences. It's
No
been
problem.
a fascinating conversation, but more than that, it has been highly candid conversation. I
Man,
have several takeaways. It has not just AI, quantum
yeah.
infrastructure that you talked about. I know our younger audiences who are considering, the next decade of their life, next 2 decades, can actually benefit a lot from what you said, in addition to the infrastructure and the investment and everything else you do about, not having the right education from the start, but still being successful, like your own personal
Yes.
background, having the network and upskilling. And also showing up. You showed up for this meeting, you showed up for our Utah
Yes.
Quantum Initiative, not being a Utahan, but still
Yeah.
all of those things matter. And I think asking the right questions. And my favorite is the moment you get comfortable, that is probably the demise, right? So you got to,
Yes. Miles, yes. You
yes,
have to be uncomfortable. You
yes,
you you have to be okay with being uncomfortable, and that's one of the most important things I have learned being around all these amazing leaders from the military to wherever in corporations. Is like I'm always uncomfortable, but I sit in it and I'm like, cool, this is cool. And then I play a game with myself. Like I said, I'm like, okay, how long? The longest I can be quiet. So I start timing myself because I want to hear all of these amazing people talk and have a conversation.
yeah.
So,
Listening
and
is a
as you
skill,
can,
actually. Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
skill. It's a
Yeah.
skill. Like
Absolutely. Well,
I'm
thank you so
talking.
much.
So,
I greatly
yes,
appreciate
ma'am.
it. And we wish you
Anytime.
continued success in all the endeavors. And we want to invite you again later on, for a different conversation that
Yes,
again
ma'am.
just surrounds quantum infrastructure. So thank you so much, Nick. We'll talk to you
Thank
soon.
you. Yes, ma'am. All right. Bye.